Hey guys, good evening. I hope I'm pretty much audible as well as visible. Just let me know, guys, if I'm audible as well as visible in the chat. So let's get started. Okay, so we have Ali here. Good evening, Ali. Thank you for joining us. So in today's discussion, we'll be talking about the complex files. So we started with files yesterday, right? So we discussed about various other topics, including how we're going to open the file, multiple modes and all that. So we saw how we're going to deal with files yesterday, right? Majorly, you're going to open the file on the fly. So here now, today, as I said yesterday, so we'll be talking about some other complex files. So we'll be seeing how we read text in a different way, and then we're gonna see CSVs, Excel, DocX, PDF, how we're gonna load up those files, how we extract the content, and how we do that basically, right? So that's what we do. So in today's agenda, we'll be reading those complex files, and we'll be talking about how we can deal with them and how eventually the data, the files, the structure should look like, the code should look like, and how eventually the files once loaded can be processed for further data analysis, right? So we'll be looking on into that. So that will be our agenda for today, right? But again, welcome everyone. So today we are again in our playlist, which is data analysis in 3 weeks, and will be discussing about complex files. I hope guys, pretty much people have started joining in. So any concerns, any questions, as always, I'm monitoring my chat, right? So please do feel free to utilize this opportunity to ask any of your questions. It could be relevant to technical or anything, right? So feel free to talk about your questions so we can take that. So it should not be a major concern, okay? I'm monitoring my chat, so I'll be able to take up your questions to the best of my knowledge. Great. So let's get started, guys. Just a quick introduction about myself. My name is Arpit Jain, and I'm a lead data scientist myself. I have been working into industry for almost 9 years now. It's into multiple domains. I have been into finance. I've been into cloud domain. I've been into automobile manufacturing sector. Right now, I'm in telecommunications. So multiple domain experience. If anybody has any concerns with any other domain or anything in specific, so in data science, I mean, you can put up your question. Also, I'm a motivational speaker, so I talk to students, I take industry sessions, I guide them regarding job placements and everything. So any doubts, anything regarding your queries regarding your job or placements or anything career, so you can always put up your questions. Okay, it's pretty much a live session, guys. So as you know, there's a difference in the live and the recorded session. So I'm pretty much live here, so you can always put up your question and we can try to interact, right? So let's make this class interactive, and we'll be learning mutually with each other. Okay. Hey Akash, good evening. Thank you for joining us. Great. So that's about my introduction. So let me move to the content. So quickly, let me do that. Just in a minute. So I hope my screen is pretty much visible, right? Okay. So we are into our content slide. So we'll be talking about our different files. Okay. So today our objective is to read these multiple different files: text, CSVs, Excel, DocX, and PDF file, right? So these are very standard sub file types available in which we work on in day-to-day life, and I mean, everybody would have anyway or anywhere seen these files, right? Text, plain simple text files which can be opened very easily on notepads. So it's the end format is txt. So the extension for the file is txt. So that txt file is called as a text file. It's a plain simple text file. CSVs, comma separated values. So where in the Excels we can also have, instead of in respective sheets in the respective rows, we can further downgrade the same file, saving the data in the by simply using the comma separator values, right? So I mean, same text txt file can also be converted into CSV by just giving a space as a separator, replace that with a comma. So every value is separated by a comma in that, right? So that's pretty much called as a comma separated values. It's like, again, one of the extensions used in Excel files as well. So proper XLSX file, XLSX. So this is again a very interesting extension file, so a proper Microsoft Excel file, right? So here you have multiple sheets, 1, 2, 3, 4. You have multiple data in some or the other format, right? So you have the data in that Excel file. So pretty much the XLSX file. So we're gonna be looking at that as well. Then docx file. So docx, the Word documentation. So earlier it used to be doc file. Now it's pretty much docx, the HTML orientation of doc. So that's docx file. So we can also load the docx file. Suppose if you have some content mentioned in a docx file, we can read that as well. So it's pretty much possible in Python. So we can load the Python, load the docx file, and then we can formulate the data accordingly in it, right? Cool. Again, so that's about the docx file, and then eventually we have the PDFs as well. So PDF, we have the PDF file in which it's more of Adobe PDF content. So it's it's PDF generally we open through PDF file opener. So Adobe is the most prominent one. We have other softwares as well. So PDF, in this PDF again, we can pretty much load this PDF file into a Python iterator. So we can get the information, whatever is present in the PDF, and we can ask the compiler to read the data from, interpreter to read the data from PDF file. So we can pretty much do that. Okay. So these are my different file types, and let's talk about them one by one. Hey Vanna, good evening. Thank you for joining us. So that's the agenda. So I'll just quickly mention the extension of my files also here. So text is nothing but my .txt file, okay, and CSV is nothing but my .csv file, and Excel is nothing but my .xlsx file. Docx is simple, so .docx file, and then PDF is like .pdf. Cool. So these are the file extensions we'll be talking about today. Okay, so just formulate this also. This will look good. Okay. Cool. So these are the file extensions we'll be looking at today. Okay, and then we'll see how we can work on them one by one. Cool. Any questions, guys? In between, do stop me, and then we can always take up your questions. So let's start with the basic text file. Okay. So let me pull up the text. Okay. So again, text can be loaded in multiple ways. Okay. So I have mentioned 2-3 methods in which we can load the .txt file. So very simple first method is using the Pandas. Okay, so Pandas is nothing but a very good library available with us. So for data analysis, we have something called as Pandas, we have NumPy. I'll be taking such a session on Pandas separately, so don't worry about that. We'll be taking that. But again, just to show you how we can work with the text file on Pandas. So Pandas give us a very good functionality called as .readCSV. So you can see this. So readCSV is a function available under my Pandas library, which eventually helps us to read the txt file. And in fact, as the name suggests, read CSV, it also helps us to load the CSV file. So I'll be talking about this read CSV functionality under the CSV component as well. But as I said, just the basic difference between text and the CSV file is like text are generally space separated. I mean, just like a white space separated values, but in CSV are comma separated values. But again, we can pretty much open a CSV file in the notepad, but you cannot open an Excel file in a notepad, right? But we can open the CSV file in a notepad, because if you open a CSV file in a notepad, you will just see the value separated by a comma. It's as simple as that. Okay, I'll maybe show it to you also. So that is the reason why we say that the CSV files can be pretty much worked with the text as well. So here, to load up your text file .txt file, we can pretty much use a read CSV function available. So there are certain, for each of the functionalities available, right? So there are some arguments which can be passed on top of that. So the very first argument would be my file name. Okay, so the file name, where exactly my file is present. So maybe if the path is not the same in the directory through which I'm running, I have to maybe pass the entire path of my file. But again, the first argument is talking about my file name. Okay. The second is a separator. Okay, so here you can see the separator means how my values are separated from one another. Okay, so text are generally separated by a delimiter. So basically a space, right? So here you can see a blank space here. So like just a empty space, one character space, right? So this is pretty much my text file. But same thing, if you want to load a CSV file, this separator would be not a delimiter, rather I'll be giving a comma here. Right, so just to read a CSV, it will be a comma. So that's how it should be separating my individual values, right? So it's just the way we load up the data. So text, we can simply give a separator, a delimiter there. Header means I want to specify the header. So for every, ultimately we are loading up the tables, right? So table has some header. Header means the column names basically, right? So we can also specify manually, like, if there is any header there, or we can, just simply give we can ask the, for example, the functionality to load. So from the data itself, we can ask whether it can infer the, header, or we can explicitly pass the headers as well in terms of names. So we can pass the argument names, and where we can specify, the specific header we want, column 1, column 2, we can also specify that as well. Okay. So just a basic intro to your different arguments here. So file name.text, nothing but, as the name suggests, is the name of the text file from which we want to read the data. Okay, so from where we want to read the data, that's going to be my file name.text. Sep is nothing but my separator. Okay, so it is a separator field. In the text file, we use a space character or a delimiter, right? So basically a space character, a simple white space, that is called as a separator for the text file. But again, just if you want to use this specifically for my CSV, we're going to use comma as a separator there, right? So that's the difference. Header, so this is an optional field. So by default, it will take the first line of the text file as the header. So by default, it will always take the first line of your text file as your header. So that is by default, right? But again, we can also specify if there is no header in the data, just the data, right? So we can specify, we can use header is equal to none, and we can pass external header names by using the argument names, and in this we can assign the column names by inputting the text file. We can also specify if you want to give a different header name in that. So that is possible through names. Okay. So don't worry about Pandas functionality too much, because anyway there will be a separate session on Pandas. But again, just to show you how to read up the files, I have added this information here. Okay. Cool. So just to show you, so this is my GFG.text file. So I'll just quickly pull up this GFG.text and show it to you how this text file looks like. Just give me a minute. I'll pull this up on the screen. I don't know. Should I do that? This is something which is very irritating. So I have to. Just a minute, guys. Now I am just pulling. I want to show it to you also. So like, how does my GFG.text looks like? Right. So I hope my screen is visible. So this is how my GFG.text looks like. So I have somehow looks like 2 columns here, right? So you can see in this. So I have a batsman and bowler. So nothing but a space. You can see a space here, right? So these 2 data are separated by a space, right? So batsman and bowler. And then for batsman, I have Rohit, and bowler, I have Bumrah. Then Virat, Siraj, and Rahul, Ashwin, Dhoni, Shami, and then Shreyas, Jadeja. I mean, it's more like a batsman and a bowler kind of a data. Looks like from intuitively, we can say that. So we have 2 columns. The first column header is batsman. I think the spelling is wrong here. So batsman. And, or maybe let's do it like, gender free. So we have batter and the bowler. So right, so we have this kind of information available here, right? So we want, once we load up the file, right? So we want 2 columns to be created. So the header names would be batter and bowler, and then we have the respective data in this, right? So this is what my text file looks like. Now let me just pull up the, where did it go, man? Right. So in this, let me just run this. So now what I'm doing is, in the read CSV functionality, I'm just passing this GFG.text because this file is available in the same directory where I am running this notebook from, okay? And then the separator is nothing but a simple space, okay? Now if I just load it up, what will be showing me? This information. Now can you see this? It is somehow giving me this intuition. So I have 5 rows here. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 index are given by default, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. And I have the batter and the bowler, so which we saw available under my notepad, right? So I can simply load up this information. Cool. I can also specify that if there is no header, so so we have another argument available, header. So in that header, we can also specify none. If I do it like this, now simple change. So we use the same functionality here, guys. So same thing is copied here as well, but the only difference is I have added another argument, header is equal to none. Now just look at the difference. Did you notice earlier this batter and bowler were being referred as a column header, as a column name for me, right? But once I give header is equal to none, what happened? By default, it gave me a column header as 0 and 1, like default values, and batter and bowler are now considered as my data. And can you see the indexes? So earlier it was 0 to 4, that means 5 rows were there, but now we have 0 till 5. So we have 6 rows now. And the batter and the bowler are also considered as my one of the data points. Okay. This is again one of the very good information, so which you have to understand. So depending on your data, depending on your requirement, you might need to alter the things likewise, whether you want to use the first column as a header or you don't want to use it like that, right? So accordingly, you have to use the parameters to judge it. Cool. Now again, so we can by default, so as you know, so if there is no header also, I can also give a name here, right? So team 1, team 2, or maybe we can just give, player 1 and then player 2 kind of a thing, right? So we can just like player 2, okay? So I can do like this. So now here, instead of having 0 and 1, I can just by default, I have given the names here, player 1 and player 2, is it like this? Cool. Now, I mean, again, very, very intuitively here, what if I add another name here, player 3, for example, right? It'll obviously give me what? The missing values here, because we don't have that information here. Although it'll print me this data, it'll get me this data, but there is no information available there, right? So it'll by default keep on adding the NaN information or the missing data, right? So you have to understand how many rows, how many columns are available so that you have the right set of information once you read it. Right? So that is something which is very important. Cool, guys. Any questions? Anything which is not clear? Guys, anything which is not clear? I hope this is making sense, right? Another way, another interesting way of reading a text file is using the function read table. Okay, so under the pandas itself, we have another dedicated function called as read table. That can also be used for reading up my my text files or txt files. Okay, so here again in this function also we have a delimiter operand, so delimiter argument which uses a space delimiter. So delimiter is nothing but a kind of separator for me. So here the delimiter is a space basically, so or a white space, right? Thank you, Ali. Thank you, Vanna, for confirming. I think, hey, Vasant, good evening. I think I missed your message. Thank you for joining us. Okay, guys. So yeah, coming back. So in the read table function also, we in pandas, we have another function as I said. So read table is also pretty much used to load up your text file. In this, we can give the delimiter as again space, which would be used for your reading up your text file, .txt file. Okay. Same thing, look at this. So now I have given .read table as a function, same file gfg.txt, and I've used delimiter as space. Now if I just simply run this, again, I'll be getting the same information here. Cool. Great. Another function, another way, but again, don't ask me that whether this is good or this is bad. Every function is decent enough. It depends on the requirement. Some has some other, every function has some limitations, right? So once you start working on it, you will see that eventually, right? So every data is not that clean. So you have some other information, some data is not that clean. So depending on the data, depending on the requirement, you might have to choose some of the odd functions. So it's not like one function is good or one function is bad. Every function has their own pro and con, right? So you will get to know once you really solve as many problems and as many data sets. So you will get to know when to use when. Okay. The last method is using the FWF function. So read FWF. So what is FWF? Is nothing but my fixed width lines. So it's like where we know that the lines are in the fixed width. What is the fixed width? We know that it's separated by spaces. So that's what my text means, right? So another function available under pandas. So read FWF or fixed width lines. So we can also use FWF. It's pretty simple. So it by default assumes that it's a text file, and the fixed width is space, and we're gonna use that. And if you use FWF here, read FWF, so it's gonna use and simply pass txt, no delimiters here, no, not required. It'll just take up this and give you the information as my data frame. Got it? So plain simple as that. So we have three methods which can be used on a text file: read CSV, read table, read FWF. So all of these are equally good. So depending on the requirement, we can choose either of these. So this is how my text files can be worked upon. Cool, guys. Any concerns, any questions in the text file load up? So I have shown you 3 methods. Any questions, guys? Ali, Akash, Vandana, Vasant, whosoever else is part of our chat, guys. Any concerns, any questions before I move to the next file type? Guys, I'm okay to take any questions if you have. Do let me know if you are unable to understand anything. This is pretty simple. I don't think there should be any major concern here, but yeah, if anybody has any concerns, do let me know. This is pretty simple. So, I mean, generally, can we make bold the header? But why do you need that? So how does it matter, right? So how does it matter? So I mean, it's like for your data analysis purpose, bold is for visual purpose, right? So you see that. So that is not needed for analysis purpose. But again, so I mean, I don't see there's a functionality available to make it bold. Yeah, I mean, it's not required also, right? So just think logically from a data analysis perspective. So you need I mean, you anyway, once you convert into a Pandas data frame, right? So if you're going to see that, I'll show it to you also. It's a proper layout format. You'll be able to see the column separated separately, and then you have a header which is pretty much visible in a different font. So I mean, visually you can always see that. I'll show it to you also, but it's not needed actually anyway here. But it's a good question, but it's not needed, and I don't see there's a functionality separately available to make it bold. I mean, it's not required also, right? Cool. So now coming to your next part, okay? So CSV. CSV is or comma separated values where we have the same. I'll just show it to you this CSV file also, right? Just give me a minute. So this now same data, right? So batter and bowler where we had. So I have just written the same data into a CSV file also. Just let me pull that up. Just a minute. Just a minute, guys. Where did it go, man? Right. So this should be here. Yeah. Can you see this? So this is my .csv file which I have opened in Notepad. Okay. Can you see this? I have opened this file under my Notepad. Okay. So this Notepad is nothing but I have my data in comma separated value. So did you see earlier it was a space here, right? So earlier it was a space. Now here can you see it is separated by commas. I can open this same file under my Excel operation also. I'll show it to you that as well. Just give me a minute. I'll quickly open that too for you. It should be right here. Just a minute. Just give me a minute. It's getting a little tricky to open it. Where did it go? Okay, I'm not able to open this up in here. But again, I mean, we can open this in normal Excel file also. It's pretty fine. But in the Excel file, you will be able to see it's like a normal common columns and the rows kind of a data, right? It's pretty simple there. But again, you have to understand that by doing that, but if you load the same data into a Notepad, you'll be able to see that the values are separated by a comma. It's like a comma separated values for me, right? So pulling back with the code, just give me a minute. So, right. So here for the comma separated values, what we can do is we can load it. We can pretty much load it using the CSV functionality and using import CSV. So CSV is again a function which can be used. So we can open the file gfg.csv. So once the file is open, so here did you notice I'm using the same method which is open. So we have discussed about this open function yesterday, right? So we can open a file. So like the same way I'm opening a file here, and what is this file? gfg.csv. I've just opened this file. Now what I've done is This file is being read using a separate module called as CSV. Under CSV, we have a function called as reader. Okay, so this CSV is a module, right? So now if you don't have this CSV library installed in your laptop or in a machine, what you can do that, you can always install this. How you can install? Just give an exclamation mark here and then do pip install CSV, right? So you can always install this CSV library directly onto your machine. It's pretty much possible. So now once you do that, what you can do is simply you can open up this gsv.gfg.csv file, and then you can pretty much use csv.reader and then the file here. Okay, and then in this file is nothing but my opened file of gfg.csv. Okay, and then this is being fed into a CSV reader format. This is my read file. And now in this, what we have done is we have created the file object by doing this. So this is a little tricky to do this. So there's a step-by-step operation. So now look at this, how we're going to load up the file. Okay. So once we have created this file object using the CSV reader, csv.reader functionality, we have created the file object here. Now we have to identify this from this reader object. What is my header and what are my data points in this? Okay. For the first, finding out the header, we have to find the first line as a header. So how are we going to find the first line? Just using the next operator. Okay, by just using the next operator on the CSV reader, we're going to find out my first value here. So first of my the first line will be read as my header. Okay, so I'm going to save it under header. So I'll just print this and I'll see what is my header. Okay, now for the remaining rows, what I have to do is I have to find out each of the data and append it under maybe some kind of a list. Okay, so I have to again read these elements one by one. So what I have done is so I have made a row element as a list. Okay, and in this list, for each of these row elements, so for row in the CSV reader, so for every element in this, I'm going to keep on appending the data into my list element. Okay, and ultimately I'm printing the rows. And you know, at the end, so once everything is done, you always close the file. If you open a file, you have to close the file as well. So little tricky operation here, right? So once you use the CSV module to load up your CSV file, it's a little tricky here, but again, I hope the logic is pretty much clear, right? So we did three things here. We first created a file object by opening a file and then using the csv.reader format. Okay, so csv.reader, it's going to create your file object, and then eventually from this you're going to find out my header, and after the header you're going to find out each of my rows as well. Okay, so once you do that, can you see this? Now once I've print the header here, this is my header. So I have a batsman and the bowler, and then in the data I have this. So first row is, so here can you see this? So each of my row is now list of lists, right? So I have two elements, batsman and the bowler, right? So I have, for the first row, the elements are Rohit and Bumrah. The second row is Viraj and Siraj. The third row is Rahul and Ashwin, right? And then I have Dhoni and Shami. And then I have Shreyas and Jadeja, right? So these are my 5 different rows available, being printed in the format of list of lists. Got it? So this is one way of again loading up your data. Now once you have this information, so for example, once we have this, right? So header, for example, header, you have the header as your list. Now you can do any data analysis on top of this by using the list imputation. So if you do header of 0, you'll get your batsman. So that's going to be your column 1, right? And then now, for example, row. So rows, nothing but rows is again a list of lists, right? So if you see a type of rows, what you will get? List. So because it's a list element, right? And also if you check the length of this, you'll get 5 because I have 5 rows in this. 5 rows elements are available. And also if you want to check the first row, what is my first row? You'll just simply do 0. So I have my Rohit and Bumrah here, right? So Rohit is my first. Rohit is the element of the first column and the Bumrah is the element of my second column, right? So likewise, I can have it for different rows also. So I have just loaded up a CSV file in a little trickier format, but I can still do that. Still possible. Okay. Again, so it depends on what operation you are doing on top of the data. So what kind of information, what kind of operation you will be doing. So depending on that, you have to load up your information. Got it? So there are another ways, I would say more simpler ways also available. Again, pandas.read CSV, you saw that, right? So that is again a simpler formula available. I'll be talking about that. But again, anyone is having any concerns in this CSV module? Guys, do let me know if anybody is having any concerns here. I hope this is making sense, guys, right? Guys, quickly, if anybody is having any concerns in this. Cool. So I think it's pretty much clear, right? Great. So let's proceed with our another set of functionality available, which is again under the method one using CSV. We have done that. The second is using the read lines. Okay. Now, what are read lines? So read lines is again a basic default functionality available under the it's a default functionality available in Python itself. Okay. So what we can do is, in this we have seen the with operator, right? So we have a question here from Ali. So he says, can we do same with columns as well? What do you mean? Yeah, I mean, yeah, pretty much. So, and in fact, we have the columns here, right? So we have the columns here anyway. So the first is my header, right? So this is my header here, and then eventually we'll have the rows. So we can pretty much do it like that. Cool. Coming back here. So I mean, okay. So if you want to have only one column, one first column data. So you anyway have the rows here, right? So you can always just write a logic. I mean, we'll write one line of code. So just to get the first element of each of the lists, we can. It's a simple logic, right? So we can get the first column data and then the second column data. We can always do that. So column wise is also pretty much possible. But again, so it's like once you have read the data, right? So data is already available now. So once you have read the data, and then we can always do our computation on top of that, right? So if the data is available in the Python, local memory. So now once the data is available, we can obviously do whatever I want on top of that. So whatever logic I want to write. Cool, makes sense. But it's a good question. So because you can see this here, right? So this is my data, right? So now it's a pretty simple data. So I have only 2 columns, 5 rows, but a very simple data. But so I have this list of lists. So first list element within this sub list, which gonna be my first row, right? So in the first row, first element will be my first column, right? So I can just write a loop logic kind of a thing, and then we can find out the first element of all of my list that is going to be my first column, the entire first column data. I can get it like that, right? So this is the reason why I'm saying that it's more a bit of a complex method by using CSV. But trust me, this is again used in a lot many operations, because if you want the data to be directly loaded in form of maybe a list, right, which can be further used for computation purpose, it's very easy to compute on list, right? So list computations are comparatively easier. So yeah, we just still use CSV instead of using Pandas read CSV, right? So depending on that. Cool. Great. So now another method of reading a CSV file is read lines. Okay. So what are read lines? So read lines here again, nothing but my you can see this. So we've already seen this functionality, right? So again, we're going to use the same method. So we're going to open this file and we're going to use the with operator here, right? So with open gfg.csv as file. And we know that. So once we use with operator using along with open, right? It means that it's kind of a iterator element, iterator read operation, right? So it'll be valid till the time my reading operation is still running on, right? So now here it ends with a colon, and I have to now mention that after opening this, what I have to do till the time it is open. I have to do what, right? So it's more of a looping kind of a logic here. So here we mentioned that if you're going to open this file, after immediately opening this, do this. So do file.readline. So I have mentioned that. So once I've opened this gfg.csv, I have temporarily named this file for the Python interpreter as file. Okay. Or if I just do say file as say ABC, for example. So this is going to be my, so now I have to do abc.readline. So this means that this is my local name for this gfg.csv for the Python interpreter. And then on top of this ABC, I'm going to read each and every line of my CSV file. Okay. So that's going to be my content. Now this content is loaded, pretty much it is loaded, right? So now I have my content for, for my first part. So now each of the content is being loaded as line by line, right? So it's like one line is my one content, second line is my another content. So it's like all the lines are being read. Look at this, guys. All the lines are being read here, okay? So now on top of this, what we can do is, so header will be what? Will be my first line, right? So it's going to be my first line. So what I've done, so colon, comma, colon 1. So I take the first header, first line is going to be my header. And post that everything is going to be my rows. It's going to be my information available here, right? So once I do this, I'll see like this. So again, at the end, I'll be getting my list of information. And here I have the first, so once I print the header, I'll be getting the first line, which is batsman and the bowler. And then I'll get this for the rows. So for the rows, as I said, it's going to be all the lines after the first line, right? So it's be like, then again, so this is my first, the second line, this is my third line, and this is my fourth line, and then like that. Okay. So one interesting thing which you are seeing here is after every end character, we have /n. Okay. Did you notice? So we have /n. So even here we saw /n. Then we have /n. /n is a very I mean it's like an end of line operator in Python. So like /n is for the next line, right? So here, yeah, by default, once you do read lines, /n will always come. It's a by default thing for you, right? But yeah, /n can always be removed using .strip function. So I'll show it to you also how you can use .strip on top of that to remove your /n function, right? It's very simple as that. So, but again, so another method to use my, to load up my CSV file is read lines, okay? So the first, what we saw is using a CSV operator. So CSV direct library is also available. We opened a file and used csv.reader to open up the file. And then we saw a lot of other things to find out the header and the rows. The second is my read lines, okay? So read lines is it's comparatively simpler than loading up the data into using the CSV operand. But here, we have to again specify the header, which is going to be my first line, and then row is going to be my second line onwards, everything. Got it? So that's going to be my read lines concept for me. But now let's see. So again, in the read lines, the only single problem what we get is because it's like a line format, right? So after a line, there's a line operator, end of line operator, right? So end of line here is /n generally. So /n. So at the end, once we see /n, right? So I mean, to process the data, it's like an unwanted data for me for the processing part, right? I don't want this to be there in my data. So I want this to be removed. So now how can I remove this? So this is again something very important. So how can I remove this? So definitely /n is possible. So, but again, how we can apply / on top of that. So now let's try to run this and see how we can run it. So for example, header. Let's look at this. I'll just try to code it for you. So header है ना, header है यहाँ पे हमारे पास. So header, this is my header. So now header, how can I apply the split function? How can I apply the strip function? Can you apply .strip here? Can you apply header.strip here? No. The reason is what this header is. Header is a list element, right? And list element does not has any strip attribute. We studied strip available under my string, right? It's an attribute of a string. And it's a list element. So if you see a header type of my header, this is what? This is actually a list element, right? So what exactly my string is? So string is actually the element of my header. So this inside part is actually my string. This is my element of my header, right? So how can I get the element of my header? Can I do it like this? Header of 0. I'll get the list here. I'll get the string here now, right? So if I do it like this, suppose again, if I check the type of this, now this is string, right? Now on header of 0, I can apply split. I can do that, right? Now if I apply, so just look at this. So I have header of 0 as this, right? This is my entire string. Now if I apply dot strip on top of it like this, did you notice? So now if I apply just dot strip, now this thing is gone, right? So dot strip, if I just simply apply dot strip, now it has, it took away the /n operator which I wanted to have, right? But again, remember guys, dot strip is a functionality of string, not a list. Again, this is a question which is sometimes asked for an entry level position in data science, okay? So dot strip is always used on string, not on list, okay? So remember that. Cool. Likewise, so now this is for header, right? Simple header, we can always do that. So, we can replace this header, we can write .0, then we can do dot strip. Okay, so we can remove this. So again, maybe we can just do it separately. We'll write it separately. Okay, so now rows. So rows. Now what about rows? So rows has, rows in itself have multiple such elements, right? So it has 5 elements. So one first row, second row, third row. Now if you do rows of 0, for example, you'll get the first element, right? Yeah, on this you can obviously apply dot strip. You'll get rid of your the functions, right? This is pretty much fine. But what if you want to apply the same thing on each of my elements? So obviously you have to write it in some kind of loop, right? So we can write in some kind of loop. So maybe I'll just write a simple for loop. We can do it in the lambda also, pretty much fine. I'll just give it to you simple, both the operations. So for I in rows, for example. So now again, look at this. So there are 2 ways. I have already given you this example. So if I do a print of I here, what will I get, guys? I'll get the elements here. Rohit Bumrah, Virat Siraj, Rahul Ashwin. I'll get the elements here, right? But here I want to get the indexes of it, and I want to make the changes in my indexes, right? So I cannot do for I in rows. I'll get the element in this. What I want the index of this. So for this, I have to do for I in range of length of, if I do rows, so that I'm saying that now this I is not an element, I is an index, right? Now this is index now. Now if I print I, I'll get 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, my index values, right? This is what I want. Now, if I run it like this, so now if I want to print the element, I can do rows of I, right? Now I'll get the same thing, right? So now I have used the index logic just to use, instead of using an element here. Now how can I change the elements? Simple thing, right? So rows of I will be rows of I dot strip. I can do that. It's pretty much simple. It's done. So now if I print rows, right, I'll get the elements which is away from the strip, which is away from the dot slash n operator. So we are not having the slash n now, right? Pretty simple. Make sense, guys? Right? Anybody is having any concerns in this? Okay, so this is how we can get rid of this. So now how can you apply the same logic in this code? So this is my thing, right? So if I run it again, I'll still get the slash n. So just to update this code, we have seen this logic, right? So just apply this here. So now for the header, we can always say that take 0, the first element, dot strip. It'll give me the great, nice results now. And then for the rows, I have to apply a logic of the loop here, right? So now for I in range of length of, say, length of my rows, and then for this apply rows of I will be equal to rows of I dot strip. Cool, simple. Now if you print the results, now you have the results which you wanted, right? Make sense? And then see again, now one more problem which I'm seeing here is, now can you see this? Now this is not a list anymore, right? So we can always convert this element just by enclosing it over a list. Okay, if I do it like this, now I'll see even this as a list now. Okay, so I just added a list element on top of this. I just enclose it on top of my list. Okay, now I have the list element. Guys, is this getting clear to you, or is this getting overboard? Guys, I don't want you to get confused by anything whichever I'm talking. So I want you to understand this actually. So I hope this is making sense. Quickly, guys. Okay, Akash is clear. Anybody is having any concerns? Ali, Vasant, Vandana, whosoever is part of our chat today, guys. Do let me know if I'm able to make sense to you in this. Okay. My objective is to again make you feel comfortable, make you understand the logics. Okay. So do not think that I'm trying to run through the code and run through the concepts and try to cover the things as soon as possible. No, I'm here to make you understand what I'm trying to do. Okay. So in the CSV, till the time we have read about 2 things. We first discussed about using the basic CSV operator. So I mean the CSV function, CSV library, and then from the CSV library we use the CSV.reader, And the CSV.reader, we checked on how exactly we can find out the header and then individual rows. Eventually, it'll be going through my loops and then getting out my elements. So basically, list of lists. So first list is going to be my header, and then we'll have the list of lists where I'll be having the multiple rows available there, right? So for my rows information. Likewise, in the read lines, by default, it's going to read the elements in form of a line. So first line will be my header. Next lines, subsequent lines will be my data, right? So likewise, we have just said that. So we have said header is going to be my first line, and then row is going to be my second line onwards. Everything is going to be my rows information there, right? So, and then what I've just used here with operator, and then given this ABC as my temporary file name for this csv.gfg.csv, and then this content is created by using the read lines function, which is an inbuilt function, and then by this I'm gonna create my information, which anyway we saw is going to give me /n at the end, and we can always remove this /n by using my strip function, and we also saw how we can apply the strip function on top of this, right? So clear? We have the clear data, so we just added dot strip here and then for my rows as well, and then we eventually got the correct format which we wanted to see, right? Clear, guys? I think we are pretty much on time, so I think let's stop here. So I wanted to cover other things as well, but again we're doing good. So let's stop here, and then we can take the remaining part. So we have in the CSV we have method 3 also. We have methods, so 2-3 more formats. We'll see that. Then we have Excel, we have docx, we have PDF. So I have pretty much made a good content for you guys. So don't worry. I'll try to cover this. So we'll continue with this tomorrow. So tomorrow again we'll have the same session, so I'll just update the content likewise, and we can just talk about the PDFs and the docx there. Okay, so don't worry about it. So but I'll try to cover this first, and then we'll go to docx and PDF tomorrow, so don't worry about that. So we're pretty much on time now. So I hope today's session you are able to understand. We went little deep in the codes, and then we saw how we can load up the files. Okay, so we have a question from Ali. He says, we have to use for loop in terms of index for rows other than header to remove /n. Yeah, I mean that's what the logic I use. I mean still there could be another way. So we can use map. We saw, right? So it's again a list for you, right? So it's list again. We have a list of elements. You can always use a map lambda. So lambda map. We studied about that, right? So we can alter that content. So there are multiple ways in which you can remove /n. So but I used so indexing idea from the loop just to kind of use the indexes and replace the /n for every index values, right? So that's what I did. But there are a lot many ways, not only way. So dot strip only takes away /n. Yes, so we saw that, right? So dot strip just took away the /n character. It's basically my the end character. So it's gonna be it will take away that. Yeah. Right, so it will if you can get notes. Okay, so I'm actually a little unsure of how to attach this notes in this. So let me check with the ops team here, and then maybe if I can attach this notebook in the description of this video. So let me check that. Okay, so we can do that. Any other questions, guys? Any other questions? Any other questions, guys? Last moment questions, if I can help you with. Cool. So okay, that's fine, guys. So let's meet tomorrow. Tomorrow we'll be heading towards our file. So we'll be discussing about other things. Okay, so we'll be talking about a lot many other topics. So we'll be discussing on PDFs. We'll be discussing on docx. So a lot of things available for us. So let's stay tuned. So we'll be discussing tomorrow with the. We'll complete this file tomorrow. Okay. No, dot strip does not mean last character, but here dot strip by default it means space, right? So here /n is nothing but my space kind of a character for me. So that is the reason why dot strip is taking away my end character, my /n character here. So by default, strip does not take the last character. By default, it means a space it takes as a default value. Reader and writer objects. Yeah, so CSV.reader, CSV.writer, we do have that. Okay, if you want, I can cover that. So I'll try to add those content also for tomorrow, Vanna. So we have the reader and the writer objects as well. So in CSV itself, the library, we have CSV writer and CSV reader. So we can do that. Right, so with CSV files, yeah, so with CSV files, we have reader and writer as I said. So in the CSV module itself, so we can open a file and we can write the content on top of that. So I'll show it to you that as well. Or in fact, what I can do is, so we have a session plan on Pandas anyway, right? So we'll be loading up a file there. So maybe at that time, I can tell you how to dump a file into CSVs as well. That'll make more sense. Anything is fine. I think it does not really matter much. Cool, guys. So I think that's pretty much it. Thank you so much, guys. Thank you so much for interacting well. So let's meet tomorrow at the same time, 10 p.m. and we'll be discussing on the remainder of the topics, which is basically towards my what. So we'll discuss about docx. We'll finish the CSV, then we'll go to Excel, docx, and PDF. We'll see that tomorrow. Okay. Thank you so much, guys. Thank you so much for connecting. Till then, happy learning. Bye-bye.